welcome. It's the final Confessions podcast of 2016. This is Christmas Bed, Sleigh Ride. 4 minutes and 45 seconds. There you go. Can get you out of all kinds of difficult situations. So this week we have another audio array of unforgivable festive faux pas. Just the three of them, because we did a couple of all requesters at the end of the week. Anyway, we have three belters for you. Your mother-in-law should know, knocking around the Christmas tree, and stuck like glue. Okay, just the three. Stand by, here they come. Father Simon of the Collective. My confession takes us back to 2012, when it was mine and my husband's turn to host Christmas for both our families. In the run-up, we'd all been suffering from the effects of the flu, but soldiered on knowing how much everyone was looking forward to the big day. As both sets of parents were staying overnight, both sets of parents, oh my goodness me, terrifying, and expecting breakfast at ours, my husband and I agreed that we would provide a lovely brunch, thereby giving us more time to prepare the main turkey dinner to be served later in the evening. Dressed, showered and ready for action, the first part of the day seemed to go well. Gifts exchanged, I went into the kitchen to prepare the brunch, mainly involving opening bottles of Prosecco, heating up party food in miniature and providing cupcakes and cheeses. As I did several rounds with the food and refilled glasses numerous times, my mother-in-law complimented me on the nibbles and asked me when I was planning to serve lunch. I quickly explained this was lunch, but that was, of course, we would, of course, be having our main turkey dinner later in the evening. This evening? She exclaimed. But we need to be home by 5. Discussion followed, whereby it transpired that their plan to stay overnight had changed, but my mother-in-law's insistence on only ever communicating with my husband meant that this was the first I'd actually heard of it. Now, many daughter-in-law relationships are built on a combination of false politeness, wariness and downright one-upmanship. And I'm delighted to say that ours was no different. Don't get me wrong, in the early years I had foolishly tried hard to please the woman, but after nearly a decade of criticism, backhanded compliments and zero offers of help or babysitting since the kids had come along, not to mention the fact that she always manipulated my husband to get her own way, I was at the end of my tether. However, in order to avoid a Christmas confrontation, I agreed to cook and serve our turkey dinner early, but frankly, this was the last straw and I was fuming. As I huffily stormed out and amended my beautifully prepared turkey and trimming schedule, my mind began to wander and I started to imagine ways in which I could get revenge on the woman who over the last 10 years had never helped, always visited empty-handed, and packed in as many meals, outings and trips as she could at our expense. I should also point out that her backside was currently permanently glued in her favourite place on our sofa, which, coincidentally, she knew to be my favourite space. Anyway, so all is set for a very peaceful Christmas. An interruption of my reverie came from the living room as her ladyship imperiously shouted through to ask if there was more fizz and could she have some more of those lovely little chocolate cupcakes. The entire request made, of course, without relinquishing her, i.e. my, space on the sofa. And at this point, the red mist descended. With revenge now at the forefront of my mind, I concocted a number of schemes to get her off the sofa, which in no particular order included batting my children off to grandma for toilet visits, accidents, figuring out new toys, picking up items from the floor, games involving head, shoulders, knees and toes and knees. The list was endless. Did I succeed? Not a chance. This woman was not moving, and every one of my attempts had been effortlessly palmed off to someone else. Not only had she not moved from the sofa, but she now commandeered the remote control and managed to set herself up with a fresh bottle of Prosecco and half a cheese board, all without moving her fat bottom. Defeated, I slumped into a chair, feeling utterly deflated. At that moment, my 3-year-old son toddled in, and as if sensing my despair, gave me a great big hug, which I gratefully accepted and returned. He pointed at the mess of leftovers on the kitchen table. "Grandma's favourite," he said, pointing at the leftover miniature chocolate cupcakes. There was quite a pile. "Yes," I sighed, "Grandma's favourite." "Grandma take home?" he inquired, having seen me put together doggy bags for Grandma many times before at her insistence. "Yes, I suppose so," I said, exhausted and defeated. I set about looking for a food bag to put her goodies in, muttering grumpily to myself as I did so. Having retrieved a fresh food bag from a roll in the kitchen drawer, I turned round just in time to see my son holding my mother-in-law's very expensive handbag. And before I could stop him, he was dumping the plateful of leftover cupcakes into this very expensive cream leather handbag, which he had foolishly left in our hallway. Grandma's bag, he said triumphantly. Now, I could have snatched the bag from my son instantly, explained his mistake to him, performed some damage limitation by scooping out the mushy and partially melted cupcakes from her bag, and apologised profusely to my mother-in-law, undoubtedly with her full expectation of having her handbag somehow laundered or replaced. But Father Simon, I'm ashamed to admit I did none of those things. Instead, I looked calmly into my mother-in-law's handbag, then at my son's expectant face. "Good boy," I said. "Do you think there's anything else Grandma might like to take home?" I asked innocently. My son and I simultaneously surveyed the leftovers, and, as if by divine intervention, our eyes met over the slightly oozy, stinking cheese. His innocently, and mine with Machiavellian intent. "Grandma's favourite?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Grandma's favourite." Remarkably, and despite my son's trotting back into the living room and chanting, "Surprise for Grandma!" repeatedly, she didn't clock the surprise in store for her until it was time to leave, by which point, apparently, I was sound asleep, exhausted from the remnants of my flu, certainly not the Prosecco, and snoring gently on the sofa, vacated at last for the turkey dinner which I had neither the appetite nor the energy to eat. So the forgiveness, Father Simon, is not from my mother-in-law, who frankly had it coming as far as I'm concerned, not even from my husband, who had to deal not only with the aftermath of his mother's dismay at the contents of her handbag, but the clearing up of the entire day's meals, and with entertaining my parents for the rest of the evening whilst I snored on. But I do humbly beg forgiveness from my now 7-year-old son, who, despite his very best efforts, has never understood why his grandma prefers his older sister, and was despicably used as a pawn for my own entertainment and evil scheming. Solid of Sussex. Well, you can imagine that camembert, or whatever it was, going into the bag would have been a fine moment. Revenge came at last for Solid of Sussex via the kitchen. What do you say, Sister Bobby?
Well, this is really tricky because, of course, outlaw jollities at Christmas are always really difficult, and you have to be your best at all times. So well done for kind of holding up for so long, because you didn't crack, really. The thing to do is just to get out, roll out more bubbles until they're asleep, and that's usually the best way. Although I don't advocate, of course, that much alcohol in one person, but sometimes it's necessary. That's all I can say. The other thing is about this is you missed an opportunity, of course, because she wasn't, at least after all, staying the night, and she was going early. That's the advantage of being nice to her, because she was going to stay the night, wasn't she? And they were going to eat late. So at least you got on one side of the outlaws. But the thing is, that little boy now is going to suffer for the rest of his life. And I think because
that's
really,
not Solly's fault, though, is it? That's Grandma's fault.
Well, yes, but because he was encouraged to do a very, very bad thing by his mum. And you see, the thing is, he is bearing the brunt and the scar of his mother's actions. But I do understand her, but she is sadly not forgiven.
Brother Matthew.
Well, he shouldn't have put the cupcakes in a handbag, should he? Unlucky. Gonna have to live with that. Little life lesson for you there. I love this story. I thought there was a danger we were going to go down the laxative route there. I thought I could see laxatives coming around the corner.
That would make it in. No.
Well done for not going down that route. Very much a noble effort in deciding to fill her handbag.
I have to say that there was an episode involving hot and spicy chicken wings, which we had to remove for duration purposes.
Okay, good. Well, that as well, I regard as far more noble than any other route that I was thinking of. What was the husband doing throughout all of this? Why isn't he backing up his wife with this rather fearsome-sounding mother-in-law? So I am going to forgive, just because there was zero solidarity from the husband in this whole affair.
Simon and team, 20 or so years ago, my wife Julie worked nights for the NHS, and as Christmas approached, she asked me to sort out a tree and decorate it, either while she was at work or asleep in bed. Sort it out. Just you, it's your gig. You don't do much, you do it. At the same time, our friends Mick and Yvette had just gone away for Christmas and had asked us to feed their cats. We had cats too, and they'd feed ours when we went away, so it was a decent reciprocal arrangement. Well, one night after Julie went to work, I went up to the loft to find our plastic tree and our fake decorations, and promptly banged my head on a beam, which was followed by the usual a cussin', an Anglo-Saxon. I came back down cursing the whole darn thing and checking that I wasn't actually bleeding to death, which fortunately I wasn't. Then I had a thought, probably because of the bang on the head, that I could actually borrow Mick and Yvette's real Christmas tree, and that this would be so much more impressive than the plastic one I was too tight-fisted to buy, you see. So the next day I said to Julie, I'll sort the tree out tonight and I'll feed Yvette's cats to save you the time, because she normally fed the cats on her way out to work. So when she left for work, I set off to Mick and Yvette's place. I fed the cats, looked at their lovely real tree with tinsel, baubles and lights and thought, can I do this? Yes, I thought I can. I unplugged the lights, laid it down, got a couple of bin bags, put one over the top after getting it out of the stand, put one over the bottom. Needless to say, it was a bit of a mess. Pine needles and water everywhere. But eventually I managed to drag it to my Vauxhall Chevette hatchback and I forced this Christmas tree in. How desperate is this? I drove home and dragged the tree in, then stood it up in the stand and plugged it in. Amazingly, the lights worked, and after cleaning up another lot of mess and broken baubles and everything, I stood back and admired my work. The next day, my wife was really pleased. Oh, a real tree, she said, surprised, followed by, it has lost a lot of needles, though. Thinking on my feet, I said, well, not long after decorating it, the cats attacked it, and they had it down and... Sorry about that. Anyway, she accepted this, and the cats had a right good telling off.
Yeah. My experience, cats always respond well to tellings off. Yeah.
That's right, they amend their ways.
They definitely do.
So over Christmas, we had a lovely tree, and I went to feed our friends' cats every day, so everyone was a winner. Before I knew it, New Year's Eve had come round, and Mick and Yvette were due back the next day, obviously expecting to see their tree where they'd left it. I was about to panic, but Judy said she was going to go shopping for a couple of hours, so as soon as she'd gone out, it was Operation Return the Tree. I unplugged the lights and stuffed the tree back into the 2 bin bags. And as I dragged the tree to my car, still decorated, I did get, I have to say, Father Simon, some rather funny looks from my neighbours.
Who'd have thought?
Eventually, I got it back into our friend's house without too much trouble, and I set the whole thing up again. However, this time the lights wouldn't work, no matter how much I tried. I tidied up the best I could, although it was still a little bit messy. I fed the 2 puzzled-looking cats and went back home. Well, once I got there, I had some explaining to do. Julie obviously had noticed that the tree was gone. Yeah, the cats had it over again. There were broken light bulbs, broken baubles, water from the tree. I decided, darling, it's no longer safe. I've got rid of it, got rid of the whole thing. Thought you'd be impressed. Well, it's fair to say she wasn't. None too happy because we had family coming round on New Year's Eve. But eventually, I made her understand. Nice of you. When Mick and Yvette got back, we had a call thanking us for looking after the cats, but also saying, were there any problems? Well, because I had taken the call, responding to comments like the tree looks like it's been to hell and back, which is what they were saying down the phone, I said, yeah, it's your cat's fault.
Great.
The little blighters had the tree over almost every day. And I've done my best to clean up the mess, but after a while, what can you do? Can't say. Anyway, they were grateful for this and apologised. They really are too much. They promised to tell the cats off.
Yeah.
Again, these cats getting a lot of telling off. So against all the odds, Father Simon, I actually got away with it. No one knows the truth until now. So I'm just explaining to Paul and Yvette and to my other half, asking forgiveness not just from my wife, who believed me to be in the Christmas spirit by getting a real tree and helping with cat feeding for our friends, but also from Mick and Yvette, who had their tree dragged around and used by us and then left in a pretty rotten second-hand state, and of course to all the cats who are long gone, who had to take the blame for our naughty behaviour. I'm reminded of my sin every Christmas since, so please help me to clear my conscience. I think people are going to be pretty stern on this, because there's nothing wrong with a fake tree. Enjoy the fakery. There's nothing wrong with buying a nice little real tree. You can get one for a tenner, but don't nick your neighbour's tree and pretend it's nothing to do with me, though. What do you say, Sister Bobby?
No, you're not forgiven,
No,
Paul.
you're not, no.
You're a miserable cheapskate. And actually,
That's right,
it
you
doesn't
are.
even make any sense. You actually made more work for yourself. Twice you had to move one, which created mess at the old place, then move on to the new place and clear it up and make it look good again. So you still had to dress a tree and get one in the back of your car. So why didn't you just buy one? Because then you had to take it back to the house and tidy up again. And also you basically put 4 cats into distress as well and blamed them. Of course they
Yeah.
don't know, but to blame it on a cat is pretty pathetic. Paul from Staffordshire, you are unforgiven, you cheapskate.
Brother Matthew.
Huge amount of faff for what is effectively saving yourself a tenner. Why bother? But I have no problem with telling off cats because, frankly, they just look back at you. Are you going to feed me? No. Are you going to stroke me? No. Well, I'm off. Say what you like. I'm living my life. So I am going to forgive just because, cats. What's that about? Yeah. So forgive.
Dear Father Simon and the Posse of Pardon, my tale goes back to December 1963. What a night. When I was 10... Think about it. When I was 10 years old and in my last year at primary school in Radcliffe, a small mill town in Lancashire. Our school, like most others, held a nativity play and carol service every year, and 1963 was no exception. The nativity play was the domain of the kind and patient Miss Foster's reception class of 4 to 5-year-olds, whilst the carol service was performed by the rest of the school under the iron rod of the not-so-kind and patient Mr. Farrington, whom you displeased at your peril. Each year, Miss Foster and Mr. Farrington somehow managed to form a school of 200 or so ragtag working-class kids into a heavenly choir, and our school Christmas concert was always attended to capacity. Now, being in the top class meant that we were given the responsibility of helping out on the aforementioned big night, which meant the boys were given mundane tasks like putting out chairs in the hall and helping with scenery changes, while the girls were given much more important jobs, such as helping Miss Foster with costume changes and keeping the little ones occupied once they were in said costumes. As each child was ready, they were sent to sit on the actor's bench on the other side of the stage until it was their turn to go on. All was well until one of my classmates arrived at speed and said, "Miss, you better come quick."
Aye, better come quick. Aye.
The angel Gabriel's just been sick on donkey.
That's it, very good.
And Cow says he ain't going on and wants to go home. As Miss Foster turned to go, her eye fell on me. "Janice," she said, she's reassuringly southern from my point of view. She said, "You finished dressing Joseph, but do not put his beard on. Have you got that? Do not put his beard on. I'll do it when I get back." Thrilled to have been given the responsibility of such an important task, I finished dressing Joseph, a cheerful, chubby and somewhat fidgety little boy. As I placed his tea towel headdress in place and secured it with his snake belt headband, I thought proudly what a good job I'd done of it, and what a pity Miss Foster hadn't let me finish the job by putting his beard in place. I knew I could do it. What could be so difficult about sticking a beard onto a small child? It would have been all my own work had she let me finish it. Everything I needed was in front of me on a tray, labelled in Miss Foster's neat handwriting, Joseph. It was a beard and, oddly, a pair of bushy eyebrows. Even the glue was there. Still, she distinctly said not to put on his beard, so I reluctantly sat Joseph on a chair waiting for Miss Foster to return. We waited and waited, and as time ticked towards curtain up, still no sign of Miss Foster's return, Joseph began to fidget even more than usual. "I need me beard," he said. I can't be a proper Joseph without me beard."
Very good.
Right. He was right. Whoever heard of a Joseph without a beard? What to do? There were only 5 minutes left before curtain was due to go up, but I couldn't possibly disobey direct orders. Then, as if in answer to my unspoken prayer, Mr. Farrington arrived, clearly irritated, and told us that Miss Foster was trying to find the angel Gabriel's parents and that we were going to start without her, so everyone should be ready. "But she ain't put me beard on," said Joseph. "Well, for goodness sake, get it done," shouted Mr. Farrington. "Just do it." Dilemma. Should I explain that she, to whom Joseph was referring, was Miss Foster and not me? But too late. Mr. F had rushed off to his piano and we were left to it. "OK, Joseph, here I come," I said, picking up his beard and a pot of cow gum, the glue of choice for schools back in the 60s. Open it, which is a big white paste as far as I remember. Opening the pot and applying a liberal amount to Joseph's face, I stuck the beard in place. Not as easy a task as I thought, mainly due to the fidgeting of the child, but also to the fact that I had perhaps overestimated the amount of glue needed and the beard's capacity to stick to fingers as well as faces. "Right," I said, "that's you done. Now stop fidgeting and stop messing with your beard. Stop messing! But it itches somewhat rotten." "It'll stop when the glue dries. Leave it alone." Anyway, I sent him to sit on the bench next to Mary. Just in time, as the opening chords of Angels from the Realms of Glory sounded from the piano of He Who Must Be Obeyed, and the choir and audience began to sing. Well, we'd done it with not a moment to spare. However, halfway through the carol, I became aware of muffled giggling and walked over to Mary and Joseph's bench, which was luckily still behind the curtain. "What's the matter?" I hissed. Mary pointed at Joseph. Look, she giggled. "Something's happened to his face." To my horror, I noticed that the beard, which had been more or less straight, now appeared to be growing distinctly sideways, and Joseph's face had a definite twist to it, which wasn't there before. To make matters worse, he clearly ignored my instructions to stop scratching, and one of his eyebrows was now firmly attached not only to his face, but to his headdress as well. This made it almost impossible to move his head without pulling off his headdress, while the other eyebrow seemed to have slipped somewhat over his eye and was now stuck completely across his eyelid, attaching it not just to his nose, and not just to his eyelid, but also to his nose in the middle. What I hadn't realised was that as cow gum dries, it shrinks, and it pulls whatever is attached to it with it.
No.
So his face was in the process of being completely distorted by the amount of glue that I'd put on. I began to understand why Miss Foster had given me orders not to stick Joseph's beard in place. Clearly cow gum was an evil substance to be used much more sparingly than I had done, and only by experts in the use of said evil substance. As I sent on Mary, I instructed her not to look at Joseph, and the scene started with my heart in my mouth and my fingers crossed. As I did so, I caught sight of the just arrived Miss Foster with the horrified face. They walked on stage, Mary studiously ignoring Joseph, and all seemed to be going well, although there was a sort of muffled explosion from the audience on catching sight of Joseph, who now resembled a cross between Quasimodo and the Elephant Man. The more it dried, the more it twisted his poor face. But they managed to contain themselves until the innkeeper opened the door to Joseph's knock. What he should have said was, "I fear we have no room," but actually, on catching sight of Joseph's face, said, "What's happened to your face? Have you had an accident or what?" Cue uncontrollable laughter from the audience and the members of the choir who could see Joseph, who couldn't say anything because his mouth was too twisted. The evening was fast approaching mayhem until quick-thinking Mr. Farrington started playing Once in Royal David City, which was the cue for the curtain to come down and a scene change. As the curtain rose again, he was discreetly placed... This is... The aforementioned Joseph was discreetly placed in the shadows at the back of the stable, and the rest of the evening went off without further incident. So forgiveness, please, from Miss Foster, who worked so hard on producing the nativity play, only to be thwarted by a cocky 10-year-old who didn't do as she was told. To Mr. Farrington, who actually salvaged what could have been a disastrous evening, but most of all to Joseph, whose real name was Stephen, if I remember rightly, for taking the blame. He said, "It were my fault, miss. She told me not to fiddle wi' it, and I did." Also for the fact that he arrived at school the next day, minus his eyebrows, as apparently cow gum is impossible to separate from hair. Oh. It turns out the ones I'd stuck on him were actually moustaches. So, anyway, so he lost his eyebrows, but he took the blame anyway. Jan was 10, classic nativity sketch. You don't want to use cow gum. That's why Miss Foster had it right. Don't put his beard on. But anyway, she did what she had to do, Sister Bobby.
The thing is all the intentions were good, and given the situation, see, Miss Foster didn't say why. She said, "Don't do it." And given the fact that she had another directive from somebody else, from the other headmaster, then what could she do? She can't go against another teacher. So basically, she did her best in the circumstances, and in the end, actually, probably created a better, more enjoyable nativity. So, from the posse of pardon, you're forgiven,
All right,
Jan.
okay, nice.
And having a Lancashire-born teacher, sister-in-law Sarah, who I think I've heard this story many a time before, and for old chubby Joseph and his mobile eyebrows, I mean, that was very unfortunate. But Janice, she was just being clever. I mean, Miss Foster had legged it. She didn't appear. So I think the fact, that she's from Ratcliffe and that she did what she thought was right.
She was trying to sort out the angel Gabriel who'd been sick on the donkey.
Yeah, I know. Well, there we go. She wasn't there. So Janice, she took the initiative and Joseph took the hit. So well done. Way up, Joe. Well done. And, yeah. So completely forgiven.
All right.
So you have to ask the question, really, what on earth was the cow gum doing there in the first place? Have we got the stuff to attach the beards to Joseph and all the others? Yes, we have. What are we going to be using? Oh, that stuff that takes her off with it and tightens up your skin. So it's obviously not her fault.
Small amounts.
Absolutely. She shouldn't have to carry the can for that. And also, every nativity I've ever seen, Joseph gets sidelined from the bit where, is there any room at the end? No. Right, you get to the back of the stage, pal. You're not involved anymore. Because it's time to bring on Elvis, apparently.
And the cowboys.
Yes, the cowboys. And the robots. So I am going to forgive, because it wasn't her fault.
Well, they were this week's confessions. There were just the three, as I mentioned, because we were doing some all requesters at the end of the week. If it has sparked something in the back of your mind, maybe you'd like to send us something, confessions@bbc.co.uk, brand spanking new confessions, and the podcast will be with you from Friday the 6th of January. So, almost done. Hang on a second. Monday show, if you missed that, don't forget Rick Wakeman was with us with his All Request Christmas, playing loads of tunes at the Elton John piano. That was really lovely. We had a festive tunes day with Bob Dylan, the waitresses, Jeff Buckley and Barclay James Harvest. And on Wednesday, Nigel prepared his final Christmas dish. It was an all-Spanish turkey, Feliz Navidad, to one and all. And if you have made it all the way to the bitter end of this very final Confessions podcast for this year, what you have to do is to tweet me something like, I promise you I'll send you a confession next year. Honest I will, Simon. Thanks for listening.